At a $4,800 luxury family dinner in Chicago, my mother-in-law calmly introduced another woman and said she would be a better wife for my husband, while everyone at the table watched me sit there like I had already been replaced. My husband stayed silent. The woman looked confused, and the entire restaurant could feel something was wrong. What none of them knew was that this dinner was happening inside a restaurant I secretly co-owned, and by the end of that night, the most expensive thing on the table was not the bill. It was the truth they were about to discover. My name is Ilara Whitmore. I am 36 years old, and I live in Chicago. I have been married to Dominic Vale for almost 6 years. Dominic works as a financial manager for a mid-sized logistics company near the West Loop. His family lives in a comfortable suburb north of the city, the kind of quiet neighborhood where reputation means everything, and people care very much about what others think of them. Dominic's mother, Angelina Vale, has always been one of those people. She believes in appearances. She believes in status. She believes that families like hers should look a certain way to the outside world. Unfortunately for her, I never quite fit the picture she had imagined. It was Dominic who told me about the dinner. We were standing in our kitchen one evening when he mentioned that his mother wanted to get everyone together. She says it has been too long since the family had dinner together, he said, avoiding my eyes while he rinsed a coffee mug in the sink. She wants to try this new place in River North. I remember pausing for a moment. Your mom wants a family dinner? Dominic shrugged as if it were no big deal. Yeah, she said it would be nice to reconnect. The thing about Angelina was that she had never once shown interest in reconnecting with me. In fact, she had spent most of our marriage politely reminding me that she believed her son could have done better. So when Dominic said she wanted a family dinner, I already knew something about the evening would not be simple. Still, I agreed to go. The restaurant she chose was Bellwood. River North was busy that night, the sidewalks full of people moving between restaurants and bars, the warm glow of autumn lights reflecting off the glass storefronts. Bellwood sat on a quiet corner just off a busy street, elegant but understated, with tall windows and soft amber lighting inside. When I stepped through the doors, I felt the familiar scent of rosemary and grilled citrus in the air. The dining room looked exactly the way I remembered it. Dark wood tables, soft jazz playing low enough that conversations still felt private, the quiet confidence of a place that knew it was good. Dominic walked in beside me. You okay? He asked. I nodded. Of course. But even before we reached the table, I sensed something was off. Dominic looked tense. He kept adjusting the cuffs of his shirt, something he did when he was nervous. And Angelina, who was already seated across the room, was smiling in a way that looked almost too cheerful. When we reached the table, I noticed something else. A woman I had never seen before was sitting in the seat that Dominic usually saved for me. She looked about my age, maybe a little younger, dressed in a fitted navy dress with the polished confidence of someone used to professional settings. Angelina stood up the moment she saw me. Ilara, you made it! Her voice carried across the table with the bright tone she used when she wanted to perform politeness in front of other people. Then she turned toward the woman beside her. This is Laura Kensington. The woman stood and offered a small smile. Nice to meet you. Angelina continued speaking before either of us could say anything else. Laura works in marketing for a real estate firm downtown. She handles some very large commercial accounts. Laura looked slightly embarrassed by the introduction. Angelina waved a dismissive hand. Oh, do not be modest. I was just telling Dominic about that campaign you did for the new development in Lincoln Park. Very impressive. I took the only open seat left at the table. Dominic avoided my eyes. For the first few minutes, the conversation sounded harmless. Angelina talked about Laura's career, the kinds of clients she worked with, the events she attended for networking. But gradually, her tone began to shift. Our family has always believed that a man with ambition needs a partner who understands business, Angelina said lightly while lifting her wine glass. She glanced toward Dominic. Don't you agree? Dominic gave a tight smile. Sure. I waited for him to look at me. He did not. Angelina continued as if she had rehearsed every word. Some women prefer quieter roles, she said, but others thrive in environments where deals are made and decisions matter. Laura shifted in her seat. Angelina, maybe we should talk about something else. Angelina ignored her. Laura is exactly the kind of woman who knows how to support a successful man, she continued. She understands how the world works. A strange silence settled over the table. I felt the attention of a couple sitting at the next table drift in our direction. Angelina looked directly at Dominic. You know, she said slowly, Laura would make a much better wife for my son. For a moment, no one moved. Laura blinked in disbelief. I don't think that's appropriate, she said quietly. Dominic stared at the tablecloth. My chest tightened as I waited for him to say something, anything. He did not. Angelina leaned back in her chair, apparently satisfied with the shock she had created. I noticed a server standing several feet away, pretending not to watch us. A couple at the next table had stopped talking entirely. The strange thing was that I didn't feel angry. Not yet. Instead, I felt something else. Clarity. I stood up slowly from my chair. Excuse me for a moment. Angelina barely glanced at me. Of course. I walked across the dining room toward the host stand. The hostess that evening was a young woman named Sophie, who had only started working there a few weeks ago. She looked up with a polite smile. Good evening. I leaned closer so only she could hear me. Could you ask Lincoln Reyes to come out for a moment? She nodded. One moment. Lincoln appeared from the hallway near the kitchen a few minutes later. He was in his early 40s with the calm presence of someone who had managed restaurants long enough to read a room instantly. When he saw me, his expression changed. Ilara. I raised a hand gently. Keep your voice down. His eyes flicked toward my table across the room where Angelina was still talking animatedly with Laura. What happened? Nothing yet, I said quietly, but I need you to prepare a small envelope for that table after they leave tonight. Lincoln studied my face for a moment. Understood. I nodded. Thank you. Then I turned and walked back to the table. Angelina was still speaking as if nothing usual had happened. Laura looked uncomfortable now. Dominic was silent. No one asked where I had gone. I sat down again, and in that moment, a realization settled into my mind with perfect calm. Angelina Vale had chosen Bellwood because she believed it was an impressive restaurant. What she didn't know was that Bellwood had been my investment since 2020. She had just tried to erase me inside a place that existed partly because of me. I folded my hands in my lap and listened while she continued speaking. For the first time since marrying into the Vale family, I did not feel the need to defend myself. I simply watched. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a room like that is nothing at all. And Angelina Vale had no idea how expensive that dinner was about to become.
Chapter 2. The years I pretended not to see the signs. Sitting there in the warm glow of Bellwood's dining room, listening to Angelina praise Laura Kensington like she had just discovered the perfect replacement for me, I realized something uncomfortable about myself. None of this should have surprised me. The truth was that the warning signs had been there for years. I had simply chosen not to see them. Dominic and I first met in 2016 at a charity fundraiser near Millennium Park. The event was for a local education nonprofit, and neither of us really wanted to be there. I had gone because a friend from college worked on the board. Dominic had gone because his company sponsored one of the tables. We ended up standing next to each other at the bar while everyone else crowded around the auction stage. He asked if I knew anyone there. I said, not really. He smiled and said, good, then we can both pretend to care about the speeches. That was the beginning. Dominic was easy to like. He was thoughtful, well-spoken, and quietly funny. He worked in finance for a logistics company and seemed proud of the fact that he had built his career without relying on his family. He told me early on that his mother had strong opinions about everything, but that he wanted to live his own life. I believed him. For the first 2 years we dated, our relationship felt simple. We explored the city together, tried new restaurants, spent weekends walking along Lake Michigan or wandering through small bookstores in Lincoln Square. Dominic often talked about building something stable and independent. "I do not want to live under my mother's expectations forever," he once told me while we were sitting on a bench outside the Art Institute. At the time, I thought that meant he had already broken free from them. I did not realize how complicated family influence could be. The first time I met Angelina Vale was in the spring of 2017. Dominic brought me to dinner at his parents' house in Northbrook. Their home was large but quiet, filled with expensive furniture that looked like it was meant to be admired rather than used. Angelina greeted me with a smile that felt carefully practiced. "So this is Alara." She studied me the way someone might examine a piece of art they were not sure belonged in their collection. During dinner, she asked polite questions about my background. "Where did you grow up? What did your parents do? Did anyone in your family run a business?" The questions sounded harmless, but the tone carried something sharper underneath. When I told her my father had been an engineer and my mother worked in education, Angelina nodded slowly. "So, no business tradition in the family." Dominic laughed lightly. "Mom! What? I'm just curious." "Mom didn't mean it like that," Dominic told me later when we were driving back into the city. That became a pattern. Angelina would say something that felt slightly insulting, and Dominic would smooth it over with the same gentle sentence. "Mom didn't mean it like that." In 2018, things became more obvious. I had planned a small dinner at our apartment to celebrate Dominic's promotion at work. I spent an entire afternoon cooking and arranging the table. Dominic invited his parents. Angelina arrived late and immediately began inspecting everything around her. She glanced at the table settings and frowned slightly. "You know," she said while picking up one of the wine glasses, "when hosting guests, it is important to follow proper dining arrangements." I smiled politely. "I will remember that next time." Angelina did not smile back. Later that evening, she suddenly announced that she had another commitment and needed to leave early. Dominic's father followed quietly behind her. When the door closed, Dominic sighed. "She just has certain standards. Mom didn't mean it like that." Looking back now, I realize how many moments like that I chose to ignore. Dominic proposed the following year. We were walking along the Riverwalk one evening in 2019 when he stopped and pulled a small ring box from his coat pocket. The city lights reflected on the water and everything felt like the beginning of a new chapter. I said yes, without hesitation. Our wedding was simple, a ceremony in Chicago with close friends and family. Angelina attended, of course, though she spent most of the evening speaking with guests about Dominic's career rather than the marriage itself. That same year, another important part of my life was beginning. My closest friend from college, Nena Carter, had been working as a chef in several well-known restaurants across the city. She had always dreamed of opening a place of her own. Over coffee one afternoon, she told me about a small property available in River North. "The location is perfect," she said, leaning across the table with excitement. "But I cannot afford the investment alone." I had been managing investment projects for several years. Opening a restaurant was never part of my plan, but something about Nena's passion convinced me to take the risk. We created a company together called Bellwood Hospitality LLC. Nena would lead the kitchen and the creative direction. I would handle financing and long-term strategy. Construction lasted almost a year. Bellwood opened in early 2020. Within months, the restaurant gained attention for Nena's food and the calm elegance of the dining room. By the time the city fully reopened after the pandemic, Bellwood had become one of the most sought-after reservations in River North. Despite all of that, I made a deliberate decision. I remained a silent partner. My name existed on the company documents, but I did not advertise my ownership publicly. Nena preferred to be the face of the restaurant, and I preferred to keep my business life separate from Dominic's family. Angelina never knew Bellwood belonged to me, and for several years, that arrangement worked perfectly. Our marriage moved forward quietly. Dominic continued building his career, and I continued expanding my investments. Then, small things began to change. Around 2022, I noticed Dominic occasionally receiving money transfers from his mother. At first, they were small amounts, a few $1,000s here and there. He explained them casually. Mom helped with the down payment on the new car, or she wanted to contribute to the house repairs. The amounts didn't seem large enough to create conflict, and I trusted Dominic enough to not question him too closely. But the pattern continued. Over the next 2 years, the total amount reached $18,750. Each transfer arrived before some decision in our lives: a renovation project, an investment Dominic wanted to try, a vacation plan. At the time, I interpreted it as a mother helping her son. Now, sitting at the table in Bellwood while Angelina attempted to replace me with Laura, the pattern looked different. Another memory surfaced. Angelina had mentioned Laura before. Several times over the past year, she casually brought up a young woman who worked in real estate marketing and was very impressive. "Laura understands the business world," she once said during a holiday dinner. I remember nodding politely. At the time, I assumed she was simply talking about someone she admired. Now I realized something else. Angelina had been introducing Laura into conversations long before that night. She had been preparing the ground. Back in the present moment at Bellwood, I watched her speak to Laura with the same approving tone. Dominic sat beside me in silence. And suddenly, everything made sense. This dinner was not spontaneous. It was not a misunderstanding. Angelina planned this moment carefully. She had invited Laura, she had chosen the restaurant, she had arranged the seating, and she waited for the exact moment to say that another woman would be a better wife for her son. What she didn't know was that the place where she believed she held power was actually mine. For the first time in years, I stopped telling myself that Angelina didn't mean it like that. Instead, I accepted a simpler truth. She meant every word, and tonight was only the beginning.
Chapter 3. The night my silence made them uncomfortable. The room felt smaller after that realization, not because anything around me had changed, but because I finally understood what I was looking at. Angelina was not just making an awkward comment at dinner. She was staging a quiet performance, one where I was supposed to disappear politely while a more suitable woman took my place. And the strangest part was that she believed the entire restaurant was on her side. She leaned toward Laura with the same bright smile she had worn all evening. "Laura, you work with developers all the time, don't you?" Laura nodded slowly. "Yes, mostly commercial projects." Angelina gestured toward Dominic. "You see, Dominic deals with complicated financial structures every day. It helps when someone at home understands how business really works." Laura shifted slightly in her chair. "I'm sure Ilara has her own work too." Angelina waved her hand gently, dismissing the idea before it even formed. "Ilara handles a few small investment projects here and there." I felt Dominic glance at me. I did not correct her. For a moment, no one spoke. The quiet stretched across the table like a thin layer of ice. A server approached with a bottle of wine, hesitated when he sensed the tension, then poured quickly and left. Laura finally looked directly at me. "So what kind of investment work do you do?" Angelina answered before I could. "Nothing too serious." I picked up my glass of water and took a slow sip. The silence that followed seemed to make everyone uneasy. Laura looked confused. Dominic looked trapped. Angelina looked pleased. At the table next to us, a couple had paused their conversation. I could feel their curiosity drifting toward us. Laura leaned back slightly. "I have to admit, something feels strange here." Angelina frowned as if she didn't understand. "What do you mean?" Laura glanced between Dominic and me. "I was told this was just dinner with friends." Angelina laughed softly. "It is." Dominic cleared his throat.
Ma'am, maybe we should talk about something else. Angelina ignored him completely. I'm only saying what everyone else can see, she continued. Some marriages work and some do not. She turned toward Laura. Dominic deserves someone who truly understands his world. Laura stared at her. Are you saying his marriage is ending? Angelina shrugged lightly. Let us just say it may not last forever. Dominic shifted in his chair. Ma'am. His voice was quiet but tense. Angelina looked at him calmly. What? We are all adults here. Laura placed her hands on the table. I did not realize this dinner involved that kind of conversation. Angelina smiled. Don't worry, you've done nothing wrong. I watched the exchange without interrupting. The more I remained silent, the more uncomfortable the table became. Angelina expected an emotional reaction from me. Anger, tears, something dramatic that would confirm the role she had already assigned to me. But silence is harder to fight than anger. After a few more minutes, Laura pushed her chair back slightly. I think I may have misunderstood why I was invited here tonight. Angelina reached out quickly. Laura, please don't feel uncomfortable. Dominic rubbed his forehead. Ma'am, this is getting ridiculous. Angelina gave him a sharp look. Ridiculous is pretending everything is perfect when it clearly isn't. The restaurant had grown quieter around us. A few people were watching openly now. I noticed Lincoln standing near the hallway that led to the kitchen. He had finished preparing the envelope I requested earlier. He waited without approaching the table. Angelina leaned toward Laura again. Let me be honest with you. Dominic has always needed someone who understands ambition. Laura looked toward me, clearly unsure how to respond. Dominic finally spoke louder. Ma'am, stop. Angelina ignored him completely. Laura is successful. She understands business. She knows how to support a man who was building something important. The irony of that statement settled over me like a quiet joke, because the building we were sitting in existed largely because of my investment decisions. Laura exhaled slowly. I think you're putting me in a very strange position. Angelina tilted her head. Why? Laura hesitated. Because Dominic is married. The word hung in the air. Angelina spoke carefully. For now. Dominic stood halfway from his chair. That's enough. Angelina looked surprised by the sudden tension. I only invited Laura so everyone could get to know each other. I finally set my glass down on the table. The small sound of it touching the wood seemed louder than anything in the room. For the first time that evening, I spoke again. Angelina? She turned toward me with mild curiosity. Yes? I stood slowly. I think dinner is finished for me. Angelina smiled in a way that suggested she believed she had already won. If that is how you feel. Dominic looked up at me. Ilara, wait. I shook my head gently. No, it's fine. Laura looked relieved and embarrassed at the same time. I'm really sorry about this, she said quietly. I gave her a small nod. This was not your idea. Angelina crossed her arms. Well, that escalated quickly. I stepped away from the table and walked toward Lincoln. He approached immediately. Everything ready? He asked softly. Yes. Please send the envelope to the address on that reservation after we close tonight. Lincoln nodded once. Understood. Dominic caught up with me near the entrance. Ilara, please, just talk to me. I looked him calmly. We'll talk later. He looked back toward the table where his mother still sat confidently beside Laura. Ma'am didn't mean... I raised my hand gently. You don't need to explain it tonight. For the first time, he had nothing to say. I stepped outside into the cool Chicago air. The city noise rushed back around me, car lights reflecting across the pavement, people laughing somewhere down the block. Through the restaurant window, I could still see Angelina at the table. She was speaking animatedly again, probably explaining to Laura that everything had gone exactly as she expected. From her perspective, the evening had ended perfectly. I had walked away quietly. No argument, no scene. just silence. Inside the restaurant, Lincoln moved calmly through the dining room, finishing the last of the evening service. And somewhere behind the scenes, an envelope waited with the Bellwood Hospitality LLC documents inside. Angelina Vale believed she had embarrassed me in front of strangers. What she didn't understand yet was that she did it in a place where the final bill would always come back to her. And that night was not over. Not even close.
Chapter 4. The documents that exposed everything. The next morning, the city looked ordinary, but nothing about my marriage felt ordinary anymore. I woke before Dominic. The sky outside our Chicago condo was still gray, the kind of quiet early hour when traffic had not yet taken over the streets. For a long time, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at numbers that had once seemed insignificant. Numbers rarely lie. People do. I began with our shared account history, not because I suspected Dominic of anything criminal, but because something about the pattern had started bothering me after the dinner at Bellwood. Angelina had always insisted she had nothing to do with our lives, but money leaves fingerprints. The first transfer appeared in February 2 years earlier. $4,000 sent directly from an account under Angelina Vale to Dominic. At the time, Dominic had told me it was just help with some home repairs. The second transfer appeared 4 months later, $3,200. Another transfer the following winter, then another. When I added everything together, the total reached $18,750. Not a fortune, but enough to notice. More important was the timing. Each payment had arrived right before an important decision Dominic and I had made together. One appeared the same week he suddenly insisted we cancel a vacation with my parents. Another appeared days before he convinced me not to expand Bellwood into a second location. At the time, I had trusted his judgment. Now, the pattern looked different. Dominic walked into the kitchen while I was reviewing the statements. He poured coffee without looking at my screen. "You are up early." I nodded slightly. "Just going through some numbers." He glanced briefly at the laptop. "Work stuff?" "Something like that." He sat across from me and drank his coffee slowly. For a moment, neither of us mentioned the dinner. Finally, he sighed. "Mom should not have done that." I closed the laptop. Why did she think Laura should replace me? Dominic rubbed the back of his neck. "She did not mean it that way." I almost smiled. "You have said that sentence for 8 years." He looked tired. "Mom just thinks differently about relationships." I leaned back in my chair. "Why has she been sending you money?" Dominic froze slightly. "What?" "The transfers. $18,750 over the last 2 years. He stared at me for a long moment. "You checked my account?" "It is our account." He exhaled slowly. "It's nothing, just family help." "For what?" "Sometimes repairs, sometimes bills." "Dominic, you earn more than enough to handle repairs and bills." He looked uncomfortable. "She likes to help." That answer explained nothing, but I did not argue further, because the problem was no longer just money, it was influence. Later that afternoon, my phone rang while I was reviewing inventory reports for Bellwood. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello?" The voice on the other end sounded hesitant. "Hi, Ilara. This is Laura Kensington." I sat back in my chair. "Hello, Laura. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all." There was a pause before she continued. "I've been thinking about the other night." "Me too." Laura let out a quiet breath. "Angelina told me something before that dinner." "What did she say?" "She said you and Dominic were already having serious marital problems. She implied you were basically separated." That almost made me laugh. "We live in the same apartment." "I know that now," Laura said quickly. "I just wanted to explain that I didn't realize what situation I was walking into." "I believe you." She sounded relieved. "I would never intentionally participate in something like that." "I know."
Laura hesitated again. Your silence that night confused me. That was the point. She gave a small, nervous laugh. Well, it worked. I felt like the only person who didn't understand what was happening. I appreciated her honesty. Angelina does that sometimes, I said. She edits the story before anyone else hears it. Laura was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, she said, that dinner made me uncomfortable enough that I told her I would not be joining any more family gatherings. That was probably a wise decision. Before hanging up, she added something unexpected. You seemed very calm that night, much calmer than I would have been. I had a reason. She laughed softly. I figured. After the call ended, I stared at the phone for a moment. Angelina had tried to recruit Laura using a completely different narrative, which meant the story she told the rest of the family was probably different again. That assumption proved correct 2 days later. My phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed a name I rarely saw. Tessa Vale, Dominic's younger sister. I answered cautiously. Hi, Tessa. Her voice sounded tense. Ilara, can I ask you something? Of course. What exactly happened at dinner the other night? That question alone told me everything. Why do you ask? Because Mom told the family something very strange. I waited. She said you caused a scene in a restaurant and embarrassed everyone. I looked out the window at the busy Chicago street below. That's not exactly how I remember it. Tessa sighed heavily. I thought so. What did she say to you? Tessa hesitated. She said you stormed out because you were jealous of Laura. I almost laughed again. Did anyone believe that? Not really. Tessa lowered her voice slightly. Dad didn't say anything, but I could tell he was skeptical, and Uncle Raymond already called me asking questions. What kind of questions? About why the dinner was held at Bellwood. That surprised me slightly. Why would that matter? Because someone in the family mentioned that Bellwood has new investors. I leaned back slowly in my chair. Interesting. Tessa continued. Mom has been acting strange since that night. She keeps telling different versions of the story. I did not interrupt. Then Tessa added something else. Did you send her something? The question hung in the air between us. Why do you ask? Because yesterday she received a package from the restaurant. My mind pictured the envelope Lincoln had prepared. What was inside? Tessa exhaled slowly. The bill from dinner and a document. Which document? The ownership registration for Bellwood Hospitality, LLC. I smiled faintly. What did Mom say? Nothing at first. Tessa's voice dropped almost to a whisper. Ilara, I've never seen her look that shocked before. She paused. Your name was on that document, along with someone named Nena Carter. Yes. Mom didn't realize that restaurant belonged to you. Partially, yes. Tessa let out a quiet laugh that sounded half amazed and half horrified. So she humiliated you in your own restaurant. Something like that. There was a long pause. Then Tessa said something carefully. The story is starting to spread through the family. What story? That Mom tried to replace you at dinner and didn't even know she was sitting in your business. I imagined Angelina opening that envelope. The bill, printed neatly on Bellwood letterhead. The ownership documents showing the founding partners of Bellwood Hospitality, LLC. Nena Carter, Ilara Whittemore. No mention of Angelina Vale anywhere. Just the quiet fact that she had staged her little performance inside a place she didn't control. Karma rarely arrives loudly. Most of the time, it begins with a moment of realization, and that realization had finally reached Angelina. Tessa spoke again. Mom has been calling everyone today, trying to explain. Explain what? Why the restaurant documents were sent to her. I leaned back and looked out across the city skyline. Did she come up with a good explanation? Tessa laughed softly. Not really. For the first time since that dinner, Angelina Vale was no longer controlling the story, and the consequences had only just begun.
Chapter 5. The kind of respect you can't buy. What surprised me most during the week after that dinner was not how fast the truth spread, but how quickly Angelina disappeared once she could no longer control the story. Families like the Vales rely heavily on appearances, reputation, manners, polished gatherings where everything looks perfect from the outside. But inside any family, the same thing always happens when conflicting stories appear. People start comparing details. And once enough relatives realized they had heard different versions of the same night, Angelina's influence began to weaken. Tessa called me 3 days after the envelope arrived at her mother's house. Her voice sounded tired. "Mom has barely left the house," she said. "She skipped Sunday dinner and told Dad she had a headache." I sat in my office above Bellwood, looking through reservation reports. "How is your father handling it?" "The way he handles everything," Tessa replied quietly. "He is not saying much." That was typical of Dominic's father. Silence had been his survival strategy for decades. Tessa lowered her voice. "Laura blocked Mom completely. Phone, email, everything." That did not surprise me. Laura had made it clear she wanted no part in whatever Angelina had tried to create. "Did the family believe Mom's version of the story?" Tessa asked. I thought about it. "What version did she tell?" Tessa sighed. "She said you caused a scene at the restaurant and stormed out because you were jealous." I almost laughed. Did anyone believe that? "Not really," Tessa admitted. "Uncle Raymond started asking why the dinner was held at Bellwood." That question mattered more than most people realized. Someone must have mentioned the ownership document. "Exactly," Tessa said. "When Mom opened the envelope and saw the paperwork, she went completely quiet." I pictured the moment clearly. Angelina sitting in her kitchen, opening the envelope, seeing the bill first, then the official documents listing Bellwood Hospitality LLC. Nena Carter, Ilara Whitmore. 2 names she had not expected to see together. "Your name was right there on the paper," Tessa said. "I don't think she realized she humiliated you in your own restaurant." That realization alone had already started reshaping the entire story. Angelina had planned a performance where I would look small. Instead, she exposed herself, and the family noticed. Bellwood, meanwhile, was thriving. A few days after the dinner, Nena walked into my office holding 2 coffees and smiling the way she did when she had interesting news. "You're not going to believe this," she said. I turned my screen toward her. Reservations had exploded. The dining room was fully booked through the weekend. 2 corporate groups had requested private events. Even a lifestyle blogger had posted a vague story about a mysterious family scandal at one of Chicago's hardest reservations. Nena leaned against my desk. "I'm not saying drama is good marketing, but apparently it doesn't hurt." I laughed quietly. "Please never put that in a business meeting." She took a sip of coffee. "How are you actually doing?" That question was harder to answer. "Angry," I said finally, "but mostly at myself." "For what?" "For translating disrespect into misunderstanding for so many years." Nena nodded slowly. "People like Angelina count on that. They rely on decent people doubting their own reactions." She was right. For years, I had convinced myself that Angelina's behavior was simply awkward or traditional or misunderstood, but the dinner at Bellwood had stripped away that illusion. Laura called once more before the week ended. Her voice was steady. "I wanted to tell you something," she said. "Your mother-in-law contacted a mutual friend and tried to explain the situation." "Explain how?" "She said the dinner had been misunderstood." I smiled slightly. "Of course she did." Laura continued. "I told the friend exactly what happened, that Angelina invited me under false pretenses and tried to humiliate another woman in public." "That matters," I said quietly. Laura hesitated. "The hardest part to watch was your husband, not Angelina. Him."
That statement lingered after the call ended. Angelina had been cruel, but Dominic had been silent, and silence protects the person who causes harm. A week after the dinner, Dominic came to Bellwood. Lincoln texted me first. "Your husband is here. He asked if he could speak with you." I told Lincoln to send him upstairs. Dominic stepped into my office looking exhausted. The past week had clearly taken its toll. He stood there for a moment before sitting down. "I should have known," he said. "Known what?" "That you built this place, that you were doing something bigger than I understood." "You could have known," I replied calmly. "You just never asked enough questions." He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, Ilara." The apology sounded sincere, but sincerity and repair are different things. "You should have stopped her that night, the moment she started." "Yes," I said quietly, "you should have." He rubbed his hands nervously. "I thought if I stayed calm, the situation would pass." "That was the situation, Dominic. Your mother replacing me at the table while you said nothing." He closed his eyes briefly. "I know." And silence is not neutral, Dominic. It always protects someone. That truth settled heavily between us. "I never wanted her money to matter," he said. "At first it was just help, then it became normal." I leaned back. "And what did saying yes to that help cost?" He looked down. "Us." That was the first completely honest thing he had said. I walked to the window overlooking the courtyard behind the restaurant. Staff were setting tables for the evening service. The quiet routine of the restaurant continued, steady and dependable. "Is there any way back from this?" Dominic asked. That question deserved an honest answer. "I don't know yet, and I won't pretend otherwise." He nodded slowly. Then he stood. "I'm sorry, Ilara." This time I believed he meant it, but meaning it didn't erase what had happened. After he left, I remained in the office until the evening service began. Then I walked downstairs and stood in the dining room. Bellwood looked exactly the same as it had the night of that dinner. Warm lights, quiet conversations, the steady rhythm of a place built by people who respected the work they did. I stopped near the same table where Angelina had tried to erase me, and for the first time since that night, I felt completely certain of something. My life no longer depended on the approval of the Vale family. My work existed with or without their respect, and my voice did not need to become louder to become final. I looked around the room and said quietly to myself, "Respect is not something you inherit, it's something you earn." The real ending of the story wasn't Angelina's embarrassment or Dominic's apology. It was standing in a place I helped build and realizing no one could reduce me to the role they preferred. Now, I'm curious what you would do. If you were in my position and your husband stayed silent while his mother tried to replace you in public, would you forgive him? Or would that moment be the point where you finally walked away?